I hope everybody has joined. Today's topic is AML. Before starting with the in continuance with the hematology section, we're gonna touch on the blood cell leukemias, and I want to make it very simplified, because I know it's one of the very perplexing and comprehensive topic, and it's very difficult to really analyze and understand at your level. So we'll keep it. I am trying to keep it a little simple, and try to drive across the salient points. So basically, what is leukemia? So you should know that leukemia is a malignant hematological disorder, and it is characterized by proliferation of abnormal white cells that infiltrate the bone marrow, peripheral blood organs, and the peripheral bloods and the organs like spleen and liver. So leukemia per se is basically uncontrolled malignant disorder of proliferation of the white cells, which are basically even their morphology is characteristically abnormal, quite different from what the normal WBC morphology is like. But what to be remembered is, along with the WBC, most of the leukemias, it involves even the other blood cell structures like RBCs and platelets. So they would invariably be involved whenever there is a leukemia. And stem cells, since it's proliferates from these stem cells which are committed, and they produce a specific types of blood cells. Either it can be lymphoid stem cells, when stem cells which are conditioned to produce lymphoid stem cells in the form of T or B lymphocytes, or myeloid stem cells, which differentiate to and classified under three broad cell types like RBCs and WBCs and platelets. So this is what basically happens as the hematopoietic stem cells, their conditions, and they it subdivides into different progenitors, erythroid progenitors differentiating into erythrocyte, maturing into the erythrocytes, then myeloid progenitors, and that differentiates into megakaryocytes, which eventually goes up to become platelets, and then the myeloid progenitors they gets converted to basophils and mast cells and eosinophils, and with the banded neutrophils they forms the neutrophils and monocytes. And the other on the other side of the spectrum, you have lymphoid progenitors, which transform into B cells and T cells and natural killer cells. So this is a basic the whole nomenclature, and the this is basically the how the hematopoietic stem cells goes into become the respective matured cells. So any leukemia, it has a specific etiologies, and that could be a combination of predisposing factors. It can be environmental and genetics. So environmental, like, can be a chronic exposure to chemicals such as benzenes, or any radiation exposure can be a part of a therapeutic treatment for cancer cells, or it can be a radiation exposure through several modalities. Then you can have a cytotoxic therapies for breast, lung, and testicular cancers using alkylating agents and TP, those topoisomerase 2 inhibitors, the anti-cancer cells, which is being used for breast cell, lung, and testicular carcinoma. Then you can have congenital anomalies that in the form of monosomy gene Either there can be an absence of a gene, or there can be aberration of the gene. It can be in the form of a Down syndrome or a Klinefelter syndrome, or even there can be monosomy 16 or several the transformations and the transformation of the genes at the several places. So all these congenital anomalies can be disposed to leukemias. Then presence of definitely the primary immunodeficiency and infection with the certain viruses, especially the human T cell leukemias, virus type 1. Then you have parvovirus, then even cytomegalovirus. These are can lead to some form of leukemia. So what happens basically, there is a lack of control, and what happens, the normal bone marrow which is to be replaced, they are being replaced by the immature and undifferentiated leukocytes and the blast cells. Forgive me for the spelling, this is a blast cells. So these blast cells which are basically conditioned to mature into different cells in the spectrum, such as I showed you in the previous diagram. Since these immature cells are they basically circulates in the blood and infiltrate the several organs like liver, spleen, lymph nodes, and even bone marrow, and they are functionally inadequate. And the secondly, with they fight for the or they compete for the nutrition in the several organs, and especially in the bone marrow. And because of their abundance, the other normal cells are not able to survive because of the lack of space and the lack of nutrients. So the normal blood cells breaks down, and these abnormal blood cells keeps proliferating in the most uncontrolled, unregulated way, and it causes space occupying lesions, and because of the several organomegalies of the different organs, and even the bone marrow, because of the spacing out the normal cells in the bone marrows, they lead to several clinical manifestations. So basically leukemias can be two types: either it will be acute or it will be chronic. So acute, as the word suggests, it will be very fast and rapidly developing, and maybe the symptom can be as less as 1 week, or even the patient have certain symptoms for less than 3 months, and then suddenly the patient feel sick right away. Or it can be in the form of chronic leukemia, which gets worse over a period of time, and it doesn't cause symptoms for years, especially in old ages. That is why the most common leukemias in young individuals is acute leukemias, and chronic leukemias are more common in old ages. Then lymphocytic and myelogenous is this leukemias, since they are subdivided into two types of marrow. So disease which bone marrow which makes the lymphocyte, if that lineage of cells are involved, then that disease is called lymphocytic leukemia. And if the marrow which is basically conditioned to become a several cell types like RBCs and white cell platelets, if that series of myeloid cells are involved, then the disease is called myelogenous leukemia. So basically leukemia can be acute or chronic. If the lineage series is myeloid cells, it will form acute myeloid leukemia, and if the lineage series is lymphocytes, then it will form acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And similarly, you have chronic myeloid leukemia, chronic lymphoblastic leukemias. So this is a multipotent stem cell, and this is a common myeloid progenitor, and that differentiate into the mature erythrocytes, mast cells, basophils. So basically, in AML, which is our topic of discussion in hand, so you have problem with this myeloblast, which eventually goes into proliferate into eosinophils, monocytes, neutrophils, basophils. And if the lymphoid progenitors, this is the lymphoid progenitor, this is basically the lymphoid series. So AML is basically a clonal expansion of the myeloid precursors, and this which usually eventually have reduced capacity to mature, and it is accumulation of these abnormal blast cells in the marrow and even in the peripheral blood, and there is an impaired production of normal blood cells as well. So epidemiology wise, the ages which are affected are mostly the old age, and the median age is 63 to 60 to 65 years. But usually these proportions of leukemias increases with age, and 80% of the adult acute leukemias are myeloid leukemias. So this is a disease of the old age, and uh, some association of AML with myelodysplasia-related changes are more common in older ages, and especially in young age, this disease is common only if it is associated with recurrent genetic abnormalities, like it can be Down syndrome, or it can be translocation, the particular 122 genes, especially for infants and children less than 3 years, or translocation 15, 17, or 18, 20, or inversion of this gene 16. So these genetic abnormalities are more common with the younger age groups. And history wise, this is a very aggressive and a very mortal disease, which is progression as very aggressive and profusive. Risk factors are, as I talked about, the constitutional syndrome, like Down syndrome, there's increased risk for AML. Then you have certain familial predisposition syndromes, which can be classified under inherited bone marrow failures, where you can have Fanconi anemia, where there is an aplastic anemia, and that leads to increased risk of myelodysplastic syndrome or acute myelogenous leukemia. Myelodysplastic syndrome is basically abnormal precursor cells, and the blasts, which can be normal in the peripheral smear, the blasts are basically, or the bone marrow, the normal stem cell blast is in the range of 1 to 2%, but in AML these blast cell could be anywhere higher than 20% in peripheral blood and the bone marrow. But in myelodysplastic syndrome, again there is a dysregulated and defective these precursor cells, which is not able to mature, but the numbers of these blast cells would be anywhere around 2 to 20%. So you can have a Diamond-Blackfan anemia or a Shawman-Diamond syndrome. This is just for the namesake. I'm trying to collect all these this bone marrow failure syndrome. So you just have to be familiar with the name. That's all. You don't have to kind of mug it up or memorize it. Then you have familial AML with certain mutated genes, and these are particular mutated diseases, GATA2 and KEP gene, which is the association of AML with the environmental exposure. We're talking about the ionization radiation that can be in the form of therapeutic or even diagnostic radiation, in the especially even the occupational radiation can be one of the major risk for the development of secondary AML. Then benzene exposure is again has been associated with the development of AML. Then cigarette smoking is, obviously there's a positive dose response relationship with the number of cigarettes smoked. And then pesticide and herbicides, they also have a slightly increased risk of AML. I talked about the chemotherapy. This is chemotherapy associated AML that can be topoisomerase 2 inhibitors, including etoposide, or alkylating agents like melphalan, cyclophosphamide, busulfan, cisplatin, which are basically all the alkylating anti-cancer drugs which have a predisposition to AML. Then you have agents, anthracyclines, or these are daunorubicin or doxorubicin. These are the anthracyclines, and there is again an increased risk of AML related to these drugs. Then certain antituberculin agents like vincristine and vinblastine, so they have reported to be increased risk in patients who have been treated with these drugs. So there can be an underlying hematopoietic neoplasm. There can be PNH, we talked about, paraxial normal hemoglobinuria. There can be myelodysplastic syndrome, as we talked about, as I just uh, detailed you. Then you can have a proliferative neoplasm. These all are kind of have a variable progression to AML. So the classification of AML can be a FAB classification, an older classification, where more stress was on the morphology and the of and by the degree of differentiation along the different cell lines and the extent of cell maturation and consideration of 30% of blasts in the blood and the peripheral smear and the bone marrow. Then you have incorporated morphology, then cytogenetics, molecular genetics, and immunological markers. These three things have come a long way as far as WHO classification is concerned. So you have to remember these newer WHO classification. It relies on morphology as well as cytogenetics, molecular genetics, and immunological markers. And the criteria for the morphological point of view, you have 20% blast in the blood or bone marrow. Not this was the basically the traditional classification. Now the WHO uses the current classification along with the AIM, which has been categorized into different category. One of us is AML with certain genetic abnormalities. The AML with the translocation between chromosome 8 and 21. Then you have AML with translocation of inversion in chromosome 16. Then AML with translocation between chromosome 9 and 11. Then we particular kind of acute promyelocytic leukemia, which is a part of AML with the translocation between chromosome 15 and 17. I think this is only don't need to mug it up or memorize it, but this is just you have to be familiar with the certain translocation, which is more common, like 8 is 21 and inversion of chromosome 16, because they have a very favorable prognosis. So coming to the next slide, you have again the AML associated with the myelodysplasia related changes, or AML related to previous chemotherapy or radiation have been subcategorized as far as WHO is concerned. Then this is a typical AML not otherwise specified, a typical FAB classification, where the AML with minimal differentiation and without maturation was M1, and with maturation was M2. Then acute myelomonocytic leukemia was M4, monocytic leukemia was M5, acute erythroid leukemia M6, and acute megakardioblastic leukemia M7. Then you had advanced stage with acute panmyelosis with fibrosis. What is important in this is basically there is one promyelocytic leukemia, which is as far as the classic FAB classification is concerned. We'll see in the next slide. Then you have a myeloid sarcoma associated AML, then myeloid proliferation related to Down syndrome. So as I said, you don't need to memorize all this, but you need to just have a familiarity to this. Then this is a classic FAB classification, where was the M0 was where you have less than 3 blast cells, and there was there is expression of myeloid antigens on flow cytometry. And M1 was AML without maturation, where you have 90% of the myeloid cells were blast and 3% were blast positive for myeloperoxidase or I think we have lost connection. Bhaiya, the connection. I think have we lost connection? Yes. Lapse of technical lapse. So We were talking about the flap classification, where we have minimally differentiated AML as M0, where you have less than 3% of the blast cells, which the MPO or SPB stain positive is. MPO stands for the myeloperoxidase. And then without maturation, you have 90% of the myeloid cells, and 3%, more than 3% of those blasts are positive for MPO. Then AML with maturation with more than 10% of the myeloid cells are either promyelocytic or greater than 30% blast, myeloblast in the peripheral blood, and greater than 10% of these myeloid cells have maturation to promyelocytes. Then this variety M3 I was talking about, it is very important once it is a hypergranular, as well as for the presence of large cytoplasmic granules, which is called oil rods. These oil rods are a very significant finding in acute promyelocytic leukemia, and important from your perspective, because these leukemias are more predisposed to cause DIC, either during the course of the disease as well as during the therapy. So DIC is one dreaded complication which is associated with acute promyelocytic leukemia. Then you have several other varieties, as you can see, and as the M7 acute megakaryocytic leukemia, again you have more than 50% of the myeloblasts which express megakaryocytic markers, which can be marked by flow cytometry, and it has a great prognosis. So pathophysiologically, basically these myeloblasts, these are immature precursors of myeloid white cell blood cells, and these basically the normal myeloblasts will mature into mature white cells, but these myeloblasts they have certain genetic changes, and they freeze into an immature state, and that prevents their differentiation. Since there is a differentiation arrest, so because of the disrupted genes or defective genes, or something, the phenotypic misadventures or radiation issues, so there will be two things. Either first there will be arrest of the differentiation, so the immature cells won't transform into mature cells, so there is a functional loss, as well as there is uncontrolled growth of these immature clone of cells, and that's what leads to the clinical entity of AML. So this is a basic little blur diagram of what I was trying to show. These hematopoietic stem cells, and they have the two lineage, myeloid and lymphoids, and then they mature into these erythroblasts, and they eventually matures into eosinophils, basophils, neutrophils, monocytes or lymphocytes, and B and T lymphocytes. And the defect in at the several stages in AML is like M1 is over there, and this basically shows how the this M3 is the defect at this stage. So this is just to give you a diagrammatic presentation. So symptom wise, as I said, the fatigue is usually the first and the foremost symptoms. Fever can be there, which no identifiable cause or no fixed chronology or fixed association. Then you can have night sweats or night fever. You can have loss of definitely loss of appetite is a very positive features. Then you can have a loss of weight, and then you have signs of abnormal hemostasis, especially bleeding and easy bruising, and especially in the gums, where the patient would note which is not being which there is a repeated gum bleeding, and sometimes the bleed does not respond to any hemostasis therapy. Then you can have a bone pain still in actually in the old times we used to have a sternal tenderness, and that is how we used to assess clinically the patient with leukemias, looking for the sternal tenderness. But that days have gone. Now we have got certain beautiful techniques and advancements in the form of cytoflowmetries and molecular analysis. There could be a subtle lymphadenopathy, which is usually generalized, and importantly it's a painless one. Then you can have a non-specific headache, cough, and this is the common symptoms, which is a part and parcel of all the leukemias. So moving move to the next slides on physical finding, can have splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, general nephropathy, sternal tenderness, evidence of infection or hemorrhages can be seen, several GIT bleeds, and bleeding associated with coagulopathy, especially monocytic AML, which comes with the gum bleed, and there can be hypertrophy of the gum or gum hyperplasia because of the proliferation of the bone marrow. And there will be there is special extreme kind of blast crisis where you have a very high number of these abnormal WBCs that could be more than 1 lakh per deciliter, and that is called extreme degree of leukocytosis, or there can be severe thrombocytopenia. Then retinal hemorrhage can be seen, and infiltration of gingiva, which I talked about, the skin, soft tissue, and meninges, even be a bone marrow proliferation or bone marrow these penetration of these abnormal cells, and then can have these leukemic blasts being deposited in the meninges, and they can also be characterized mostly in the monocytic subtypes, or with especially with chromosome 11 abnormalities. Then you can have a hematological findings anemia. Definitely you can have a very severe normocytic chromic anemia, and decreased erythropoiesis often results in a reduced reticulocyte count, and RBC survival is again decreased by the accelerated destruction of the normal RBCs, as I said, because of the competitive proliferation of those abnormal cells and because of the lack of space. Then you can have acute active blood loss, which again contribute to anemia. And leukocyte count can be anywhere around 15,000, and even fewer than 5% have no detectable leukemic cells in the blood. So it can be a leukemia, or it can be leukopenia, as well as leukocytosis. So both are the manifestation of this AML. Platelet count can be as less than 1 lakh, and it can be it can be up to less than 25,000, even in 25% of those cases. And morphology, in AML, basically you have a cytoplasm which is very granular, and which is having a nucleus with fine lacy chromatins, and you can have one or more abnormal nuclei with abnormal rod shapes in the form of or rods, which are uniformly present, which not uniformly present, but if it's present and the myeloid lineage is virtually certain, so their presence is signifies AML, and there will be a poor neutrophilic functions, which can be noted by impaired phagocytosis and migrations, and with abnormal lobulation and deficient granulations. And then you can have functional, both functional and morphological platelet abnormalities in the form of large and bizarre shaped platelets, and their inability to platelet to aggregate or adhere to normally damage into these not able to aggregate to one another or to endotheliums. So diagnosis wise, we will find more than 20% leukemic blast in the bone marrow, and immunohistological staining for the myeloperoxidase, which is very important, and the best method to determine which cells are committed to the myeloid lineage. So a diagnostic workup can be all complete blood count, liver function tests, serum creatinine, LDH, then coagulation profile for fibrinogen PTT. As we know, this particular variety of AML, which is promyelocytic leukemia, that is very prone for DIC, and in DIC you will have prolonged PT and PTT and decreased fibrinogen, because it is a form of consumption coagulopathy. Then bone marrow aspiration and biopsy, and you will have a cytogenetic and immunophenotypic and molecular testing, where you will able to understand the CD markers and the kind of genes involved. And then HLA typing if the patient, the family, is very important for the consideration of autologous bone marrow transplant. Prognostic wise in AML, usually traditionally AML was supposed to be a very dreadful disease, where the mortality was very high, and 5 year uh, survival period was very less. But with the new molecular and cytogenetic advancement and the treatment modalities, we have brought down the of this 5 year survival rate to as less than half of what it was traditionally, and you have a favorable prognostic points like younger age group. WBC is less than 30,000, especially 8 to 21 translocation, or inversion 16 or 15 to 17 translocation, where you have certain where you can see in 80% of the promyelocytic AML, where you have translocation of where this is a particular translocation where you use vitamin A derivative and even arsenic oxide that can be used, and it has shown quite a substantial improvement and substantial response to use of vitamin A derivatives. So this is one leukemia where vitamins is basically used for the as a major treatment modality. Then you have unfavorable is older age, where poor performance status and WBC counts greater than 1 lakh, that is a leukocytosis or elevated LDH, and with this particular deletions and trisomy 8, and these all classify for the unfavorable prognosis. So treatment wise, any newly diagnosed AML, they have two phases: induction phase or post remission management. So initial goal is to induce a complete remission. So once the patient has gone into remission, we can plan a stem cell transplant or bone marrow transplant. So based on the patient's age, if it's less than 60 years, we can go on with the intensifying therapy and traditional chemotherapy agents like cytarabine and anthracycline. In younger patient appears to increase the cure rates, and if it's greater than 60 years, the benefits of intensive therapy is a little controversial. So induction regimen is basically you have a cycle of combination of chemotherapy with cytarabine and anthracycline, and it is called 7+3 regimen, where 7 days infusion of cytarabine over a period of 7 days, and 3 days combination of these drugs given over a period of 3 days. So this is how the induction chemotherapy is carried out, and after one cycle of the 7+3 chemotherapy induction regimen, if there is still a persistent leukemia, and the patient is usually retreated with the same agents for 5 and 2 days. And post remission, without further therapy, virtually all patient experience relapses, and these basically post remission therapy is again designed to eradicate any residual leukemia and to prolong survival. And again, it depends on the patient's age and cytogenetic and molecular abnormalities. So people with a high risk of relapse, or those with a high risk underlying MDS or therapy related AML, the allogenic, obviously not autogenic, which it is allogenic stem cell transplant, which is usually recommended if the person is able to tolerate and transplant and has a suitable donor. So this is all about AML. Thank you so much. So I hope I have able to driven across the salient point regarding to AML, because it's a very complex and difficult topic at your level, and in next class we'll to take up CML, and so I hope you will able to have a correlation to the these topics. So anything I understand, if you have any query, you should let me know. So in the next class, once we start the class, we can talk about the leukemias, if you have any further queries about it. So we'll take up CML in the next class. Thank you, class. I hope this class was fruitful for you. Next class, first 5 minutes, we'll try to work out any queries you have. So we can sit down and we can chat over for first 5 minutes of the class, because I understand since it's being a basically one way lecture, so it's very difficult to understand how much I'm able to drive across my points. And thank you, class.